My phone recorded everything while I was unconscious at Thanksgiving, and my aunt said, "We're not calling 911, she can lie there." I woke up in the hospital with zero memory after sitting down to Thanksgiving dinner. My mom was there, smiling way too big. "You fell down the stairs, honey. Too much wine." But I don't drink. Never have. The nurse checking my IV kept glancing at me with this weird look, like she knew something. "Your family is interesting," she said quietly before leaving. My phone was on the bedside table untouched. I opened it to a file I didn't recognize. 59 minutes of an audio recording from dinner. My cousin Kelly was sitting in the corner, 19 years old, twisting her hands. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "For what?" I asked. "Nothing. Just nothing." At home alone, I stared at the recording. I'm not one for photos or videos, so if I intentionally recorded something, I knew it was extremely serious. I hit play. It started normal. Grandma complaining about dry turkey. Kids laughing. Football on TV. Normal Thanksgiving stuff. Then 5 minutes in, I heard my own voice. "Uncle Jeff, can we talk for a second? Can it wait? The game's on. It's about Kelly." My voice was stern, and the TV went silent immediately. "What about Kelly?" Uncle Jeff asked cautiously. "She told me something. About the lake house," I responded. There was a long pause. "The lake house? When did we go to a lake house?" 10 years ago. Summer of 2015. Uncle Jeff laughed when I said that. 10 years? He chuckled. "That was a full decade ago. Why are you still bringing up ancient history?" "She was 9 years old, Uncle Jeff." The room suddenly got quiet. No more forks clinking. Jeff's wife, Aunt Sharon, cut in immediately. "What are you implying?" "Kelly, what is she implying?" Kelly's voice was tiny. "Nothing. Nothing happened." My recorded voice continued. "Kelly finally told me about the swimming lessons when you two were alone. That kid's always had an imagination," Uncle Jeff said, his voice more venomous now. "She showed me the pictures you took." Dead silence. For minutes on end. Nobody said a word. Then I heard something weird. A clinking sound. Glass on glass. My voice suddenly changed. The room feels weird." "You feeling okay there?" Uncle Jeff asked, fake concern dripping. "My drink tastes. Did someone—" Chair scraping noise. "You put something in my—" Thud. That was me hitting the floor. All I heard next was chaos. Gasps. Chairs moving. Then Kelly's shaking voice. "Should we call 911? Aunt Sharon responded, ice cold. "Nobody's calling anyone. She just had too much to drink." "But she doesn't drink," Kelly protested. "I said they had too much to drink. Jeff, help me move her." Grunting. Dragging sounds. My unconscious body being moved. "Put them on the couch. Make it look natural," Uncle Jeff said. "This is insane," Aunt Sharon whispered. "Get the camera. We need photos showing she's just drunk," Sharon ordered. For 10 minutes, I heard them posing my body, taking pictures, laughing. "Put the turkey hat on. Make them hold this beer." Kelly started crying. "This is wrong." She was trying to help me. "Help you?" Uncle Jeff got mean. "After everything I've done for this family? Done for this family? You mean buying silence?" Slap. "Watch your mouth," Uncle Jeff warned. "Jeff's right," Sharon said. "Kelly's always been dramatic, making up stories." "I have proof," Kelly sobbed. "That's enough," Sharon said. "Everyone memorized this. They fell down the stairs, been drinking all day." The family practiced the lie for 5 minutes straight, each person repeating it. "Fell downstairs. Drinking problem." We tried to help. Kelly begging in the background, "Please, please call for help." Everyone ignored her. Then sirens. Panic. Who called? "Hide everything!" Remember the story? The recording cut off. Kelly and I went straight to the police station that night. The detective listened to the whole recording and made one call. "We need warrant teams. Now." At 6 the next morning, police arrested everyone at once. Uncle Jeff at his penthouse. Grandma and Grandpa at their house. My parents at theirs. Aunt Sharon too. At the police station, my family turned on each other immediately. Aunt Sharon blamed her husband. This was all Jeff. He made us do it. Then Kelly's mom, my aunt, broke down completely. "The house! Oh God, the house!" "What house?" the detective asked. "Uncle Jeff bought us our house, right after that summer at the lake 10 years ago." The detective pulled up property records. It was true. Every time Kelly tried to tell someone, Jeff would threaten to take the house back. "We have 3 other kids. Where would we live?" Uncle Jeff's own brother admitted, "Jeff's been holding that house over their heads for a decade." The judge set Uncle Jeff's bail at $1 million. Everyone got restraining orders. A week before trial, Kelly visited me crying. Suddenly, she was saying the recordings were misunderstood, that the family meant no harm, but there were fresh bruises on her neck, and she kept glancing out my window at the family lawyer sitting in his car. Kelly rushed through her retraction faster, voice shaking. She excused herself to my bathroom before leaving. I found her note up there after she left. "They have my daughter. Check the Ring camera from Tuesday." I read Kelly's bathroom note 3 more times and my hands start shaking so hard I almost dropped the piece of paper. The words, "They have my daughter," and "check the Ring camera from Tuesday," are written in her messy handwriting, and I can see where the pen pressed harder on certain letters like she was scared while writing it. I realized Kelly wasn't just warning me about legal threats anymore. This is about a child being used as a weapon to keep her quiet. I grab my phone off the bathroom counter because if they're using a kid to force silence, this just became way bigger than court testimony. My fingers are still shaking as I pull up my contacts and scroll to Detective Goodwin's number. I hit call and she answers on the second ring. Her voice sounds steady and alert even though it's late evening. I read Kelly's note word for word, and my voice cracks when I get to the part about her daughter. I explain about the Ring camera footage she mentioned from Tuesday. Detective Goodwin's tone shifts from concerned to really focused. She tells me not to touch anything on my phone yet because we need to keep the evidence safe and proper. She says she'll call me back in a few minutes with instructions. I hang up and my hands are still shaking as I open the Ring app on my phone. I stare at Tuesday's date in the timeline. I know enough about phones and technology to realize that if I watch the footage wrong, I might accidentally delete something important or mess it up. So I just take a screenshot of the timestamp showing Tuesday afternoon, and then I close the app. I wait for Detective Goodwin to call me back with instructions on what to do next. The fear that Kelly's daughter is somewhere scared and confused makes my stomach feel sick and twisted. That little girl is probably wondering where her mom is and why these people took her away. My phone rings exactly 10 minutes later, and it's Detective Goodwin calling back. She tells me she's setting up for a digital forensics guy to come to my house tonight to properly get the Ring footage and save it. Her calm way of handling everything helps me feel a little less panicked, even though my brain keeps imagining terrible things about what the family might be doing to that little girl. Detective Goodwin reminds me to save Kelly's note in a plastic bag and not touch it anymore, because it might have fingerprints or other stuff on it that we'll need later as evidence. I find a Ziploc bag in my kitchen and carefully slide the note inside without touching it more than I already did. Then I let myself watch the Tuesday Ring footage on my phone. My blood feels cold when I see exactly what Kelly was talking about. My aunt walks up to my front door holding Kelly's daughter by the hand. The little girl looks confused and scared as my aunt leads her toward a dark sedan parked at the curb. Through the car window, I can see the family lawyer sitting in the driver's seat waiting for them. The whole thing takes less than 30 seconds before they drive away. I feel sick watching it. I text Kelly right away using the safe word we agreed on during her visit earlier. I type out the message asking how her favorite turkey recipe is coming along. That was our code to let her know I got her message and I'm trying to help. Minutes go by with no response. My worry gets worse with each passing moment because Kelly's silence could mean her phone is being watched or something way worse. I screenshot the text thread showing I tried to contact Kelly and she didn't respond. Then I send that screenshot to Detective Goodwin so she has a record of my attempt to reach Kelly and the fact that Kelly isn't answering. The doorbell rings at 8 p.m. and I look through the peephole before opening the door. A guy is standing there with a big professional equipment bag. I open the door and he introduces himself as Hendrix Powell, the digital forensics guy Detective Goodwin sent over. He's wearing a polo shirt with some tech company logo on it. He explains in regular language that he's going to make a mirror copy of my Ring footage with special computer codes that prove the video hasn't been messed with or changed. I watch him work and he's really careful and organized about it. He connects cables from his laptop to my phone and types a bunch of commands. His technical skills help me feel like we're actually building a real case instead of just freaking out. While Hendrix is still working on copying the Ring data, Detective Goodwin calls my phone again. She tells me she's bringing in CPS for an emergency meeting tonight. She's already talked to a caseworker named Hayden Chavez, who works on cases where kids are used as tools in criminal stuff. They're treating this as a possible child danger situation. The relief I feel knowing that actual professionals are moving fast to help Kelly's daughter makes tears come to my eyes. But I also feel guilty because my choice to come forward put that little girl in danger in the first place. My phone rings again a few minutes later, and this time it's a woman named Margot Arrington. She says she's a victim advocate who got assigned to my case. She talks gently but in a practical way as she walks me through safety planning steps. She asks me which neighbors I trust and helps me set up code words with friends. She tells me to pack a go bag in case I need to leave my house fast. Margot's way of talking about worst-case things somehow makes me feel less alone and more ready instead of more scared. She doesn't sugarcoat anything, but she also doesn't make it sound hopeless. Detective Goodwin calls one more time with an update that makes my heart beat faster. She says Ada Alessandro Kim has been told everything, and he's already writing an emergency legal paper to change Uncle Jeff's bail rules. Alessandro is marking this as clear witness tampering, and wants to argue that Uncle Jeff and his lawyer broke the restraining orders by using other family members to threaten Kelly and take her child. The fact that the legal system is moving this fast gives me a small amount of hope that maybe we can actually protect Kelly and her daughter before things get even worse. I try to go to bed around midnight, but sleep is completely impossible. My brain keeps playing the audio recording on repeat like some horrible broken machine I can't shut off. I hear my own voice getting confused and slurred, that weird clinking sound of glass on glass and then the thud of my body hitting the floor. The worst part is what comes after. The family's voices sound so cold and calculated as they discuss how to stage everything. They laugh while posing my unconscious body. They practice their lies over and over until everyone has the story memorized. Every time I close my eyes, I see Kelly's face with those fresh bruises on her neck. I imagine her daughter somewhere scared and confused, not understanding why mommy looks so frightened, or why strange people are telling her what to do. The little girl probably thinks she did something wrong. Kids always blame themselves when adults act weird around them. I give up on sleep around 3 in the morning and just sit on my couch staring at my phone. The Ring footage is still there showing my aunt walking that child to the lawyer's car. I watch it 5 more times looking for details I might have missed. The timestamp says 2:14 in the afternoon on Tuesday. The little girl is wearing a pink jacket and carrying a stuffed rabbit. She keeps looking back at my aunt like she wants permission to say something, but my aunt just keeps pulling her forward by the hand. When they get to the car, the family lawyer leans over from the driver's seat and opens the back door. The whole thing takes 28 seconds from my porch to the car driving away. I screenshot every single frame that shows the lawyer's face clearly. Detective Goodwin said we need evidence, and this is evidence. Solid proof that he was directly involved in taking Kelly's daughter. I finally fall asleep on the couch around 5 in the morning with my phone still in my hand. My email notification wakes me up at 7:30. The subject line says hospital records, and it's from Detective Goodwin. I open it with my heart pounding, and there it is. The toxicology report from Thanksgiving night. The lab found a sedative in my blood work. The medical term is long and complicated, but the summary is clear. Someone put a drug in my system that would make me confused and then knock me unconscious. The dosage was high enough to be dangerous. I could have stopped breathing if they gave me too much. Seeing it written out in official medical language brings this weird mix of feelings. Part of me feels sick because now I know for sure that my family actually drugged me on purpose. But another part of me feels relieved because I have proof. Real scientific proof that I'm not crazy or confused or making things up like they tried to claim. The family kept saying I just had too much wine but I don't drink, and now the hospital records prove there was an actual sedative in my blood. I forward the report to Margot and Alessandro right away so everyone has the same information. Alessandro responds within 5 minutes saying this is exactly what they need for the bail modification hearing. Margot calls me at 8:15 and asks how I'm doing. I tell her I didn't sleep much and she says that's completely normal given everything happening. She asks if I feel safe at my house and I say yes because the restraining orders are in place and Detective Goodwin said they're doing extra patrols past my address. Margot reminds me to keep documenting everything and to call her immediately if any family members try to contact me. My phone rings again at 9 o'clock and this time it's a woman named Hayden. She introduces herself as the CPS caseworker assigned to Kelly's daughter's case. Her voice is professional but kind. She explains that she needs me to provide a sworn statement about exactly what I saw in the ring footage from Tuesday. I tell her I can do that right now if she wants. Hayden asks me to walk through the timestamps minute by minute. I pull up the video on my laptop while we talk so I can give her exact details. I describe how my aunt walks up to my porch at 2:14, holding the little girl's hand. The child is wearing pink and carrying a stuffed rabbit. She looks confused and keeps glancing up at my aunt like she's asking questions. My aunt's body language looks tense and hurried. She keeps pulling the girl forward instead of letting her walk at her own pace. They reach the curb at 2:14 and 30 seconds. The lawyer is already sitting in the driver's seat of a dark sedan. I give Hayden the license plate number that Hendricks extracted. The lawyer leans over and opens the back door from inside. My aunt helps the girl into the back seat and closes the door. The car drives away at 2:14 and 58 seconds. The whole interaction takes 44 seconds total. Hayden takes detailed notes and asks me specific questions about the child's facial expressions and body language. Did she look scared or just confused? Did she resist getting in the car or go willingly? Did my aunt say anything I could hear on the audio? I answer everything as accurately as I can based on what the footage shows. Hayden explains that this kind of specific testimony helps CPS build their emergency intervention case. Courts need concrete evidence and exact timelines, not just general concerns. The more details I can provide about what I actually observed, the stronger their case becomes for protecting Kelly's daughter. After we hang up, Margot calls back and says she wants to help me set up what she calls an evidence journal. She explains it's a detailed log where I document every contact attempt, threat, or suspicious incident with exact dates and times. Patterns of harassment are often more convincing to judges than isolated incidents. Having everything organized also makes it easier for prosecutors to build their case because they can see the full timeline of intimidation tactics. Margot walks me through setting up a simple spreadsheet on my computer. Column 1 is the date and time. Column 2 is what happened. Column 3 is any evidence like screenshots or recordings. Column 4 is who I reported it to. We start by entering everything that's happened since Thanksgiving. The dinner where I was drugged, waking up in the hospital, finding the audio recording, Kelly's visit with the bruises on her neck, finding her note in the bathroom, the ring footage from Tuesday. Each entry gets its own row with all the details filled in. The simple act of writing everything down in a structured way gives me back a small sense of control. This whole situation has felt completely chaotic, like I'm just reacting to whatever the family does next. But now I have a system, a way to track and document everything so nothing gets lost or forgotten. Margot says to update the journal immediately whenever anything happens, even small things that seem unimportant. Sometimes the small details end up mattering later. My phone rings at 10:30 and it's Alessandro. He tells me he's scheduled an emergency bail modification hearing for tomorrow morning at 9. His voice is serious when he warns me that the defense attorneys will try to paint me as unstable or vindictive. They'll probably argue that I'm making up conspiracies against my family because I'm mentally ill or have some grudge. His honesty about what's coming is scary, but I appreciate it because at least I won't be blindsided. Alessandro coaches me on staying calm and factual no matter what accusations they throw around. Don't get defensive or emotional. Just stick to what I actually saw and heard. Let the evidence speak for itself. I feel my resolve get stronger as I realize this is going to be a public fight where my credibility gets attacked in front of a judge. But I'm not backing down when a child's safety is at stake. Kelly's daughter deserves protection even if it means I have to sit there while lawyers call me crazy. I hang up with Alessandro and immediately call my employer's HR department. The representative who answers sounds friendly enough. I explain that I need to request emergency leave for legal proceedings. She tells me I'll need to provide documentation. My stomach twists with shame as I realize I have to explain why I need time off. I'm the victim here, but somehow I still feel embarrassed like this is my fault. I push through the discomfort and tell her there's an active criminal case and I'm a witness. She asks how long I'll need, and I say at least 2 weeks to start. Maybe longer depending on how things go. I promise to send over the court paperwork as soon as I get copies. After the call, I add this interaction to my evidence journal, even though it's not directly about the family. Margot told me to document everything related to the case. The HR call shows how the situation is affecting my work life and income. That matters for victim compensation applications later. Hendricks calls at noon with news that makes my heart race. He was able to extract the license plate number from my ring footage using some kind of video enhancement software. Detective Goodwin traced it back to a vehicle registered to the family lawyer's law firm. Not his personal car, but a company vehicle. This concrete link between the lawyer and the child's disappearance changes everything. Before this, it was Kelly's word against the family's claims. Now we have documented proof that the family lawyer was directly involved in taking Kelly's daughter. Alessandro calls back 20 minutes later and says he's already adding this information to his emergency motion as evidence of coordinated witness intimidation. The fact that the lawyer personally participated instead of just giving legal advice shows this goes beyond normal attorney-client privilege. He crossed a line from defending his client to actively helping commit crimes. That evening around 6, Hayden calls again. She tells me she's filed an emergency pickup order for Kelly's daughter with police assistance. The order is based on the ring footage, the pattern of family coercion, and Kelly's visible injuries. My stomach twists with both hope and terror. Hope because maybe they can actually get that little girl to safety. Terror because I know this action will make the family desperate and angry. Desperate people do dangerous things, especially when they're backed into a corner and facing serious criminal charges. Hayden must hear something in my voice because she quickly assures me that law enforcement will be involved in the pickup attempt. They're not sending a social worker alone to knock on doors. They'll have police backup and proper safety protocols. She also tells me my address is flagged for extra patrol monitoring. If any family members show up at my house, officers will respond immediately. I thank her and hang up, then immediately update my evidence journal with the new entry. Emergency pickup order filed at 6:05 p.m. I go to bed early that night, but again, sleep doesn't come easy. My mind keeps running through scenarios of what might happen tomorrow at the hearing. What if the judge believes the defense attorneys? What if they convince him I'm just a vindictive family member making things up? What if Uncle Jeff's bail stays the same and nothing changes? I finally fall asleep around midnight and wake up at 6 the next morning to my phone buzzing. It's an email that came in at 5:43 a.m. The sender is listed as the law offices representing my family members. The subject line says, "Concerned Outreach." I open it and start reading. The tone is fake, polite, and condescending. It suggests that I'm clearly going through a mental health crisis and imagining conspiracies against my loving family who only want to help me. It says my accusations are harmful and damaging to innocent people. It offers to connect me with psychiatric resources. The implications make rage flash through me so hot I actually see spots in my vision. They're calling me crazy. They're trying to make it seem like I'm the problem, not the family who drugged me and staged photos of my unconscious body. But then I remember Margot's coaching about documentation. I take 3 deep breaths and forward the email to Alessandro without responding. I don't type a single word back to them. I just send it straight to the prosecutor with a note saying I received this at 5:43 this morning. Alessandro responds within 10 minutes. He says this email was a stupid move on their part because it's more evidence of intimidation that he can use in court. Threatening someone's mental health credibility right before a hearing is textbook witness tampering. He's adding it to his motion immediately. I update my evidence journal with the email entry and feel a grim satisfaction that their attempt to intimidate me just backfired. At 8 in the morning, Detective Goodwin calls. She tells me she interviewed my neighbor yesterday afternoon. Apparently, the neighbor was getting her mail on Tuesday right when my aunt brought Kelly's daughter to my porch. She witnessed the whole handoff to the sedan. Detective Goodwin took a written statement describing how uncomfortable the interaction looked. The neighbor said the child seemed reluctant to get in the car and kept looking back at my aunt. The little girl's body language showed confusion and hesitation, not the normal way a kid acts when a trusted adult picks them up. Having an independent witness who has no stake in the family drama strengthens our case significantly. It's not just my ring footage anymore. It's a neighbor who happened to see it in person and thought it looked wrong enough to remember details. Detective Goodwin says the neighbor is willing to testify if needed. I thank her and add this to my evidence journal. Independent witness statement obtained. Timestamp 8:07 a.m. Alessandro calls 20 minutes later and tells me he's filing an expanded motion this morning to close the loophole the family has been using. He explains that the current restraining orders technically only prohibit direct contact, which is why the family lawyer has been able to act as their messenger. The new motion will explicitly include contact through agents, intermediaries, or third parties of any kind. Alessandro lists out all the evidence he's citing in the motion, including the ring footage showing the lawyer taking Kelly's daughter, the neighbor's written statement about Tuesday's handoff, Kelly's coerced retraction attempt with visible bruises, and the threatening email that arrived at 5:43 this morning. He tells me judges take systematic intimidation very seriously, especially when children are being used as leverage. The motion will be filed within the hour, and he expects a ruling within 48 hours. I thank him and add this update to my evidence journal with the timestamp 9:15 a.m. My first therapy appointment is scheduled for 10:30, and I drive across town to the office building where John practices. The waiting room is quiet and plain with generic landscape paintings on the walls. A receptionist checks me in and hands me a clipboard with intake forms, asking about my mental health history, current medications, and what brought me here today. I stare at the question about why I'm seeking counseling, and my hand shakes as I write about the Thanksgiving dinner recording and discovering my family drugged me. John calls me back to his office at exactly 10:30, and he's a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a calm presence that immediately puts me slightly at ease. I sit down in the chair across from his desk, and he asks me to tell him what's been happening in my own words. I start explaining about the audio recording, and I'm doing okay until I get to the part where I heard my own voice getting confused and slurred. My throat closes up and tears start streaming down my face as I describe hearing the thud of my body hitting the floor and then listening to my family stage the scene and pose my unconscious body for photos. John doesn't interrupt or try to rush me through it. He just sits quietly and hands me tissues when I need them. After I finish, he teaches me a grounding technique using my 5 senses that involves naming 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear, 2 things I can smell, and 1 thing I can taste. We practice it together, and by the time we're done, my heartbeat has actually slowed down, and I feel more present in my body, instead of trapped in that terrible memory. John schedules me for twice-weekly sessions and tells me we'll work on trauma processing and building coping skills for managing the legal proceedings ahead. I leave his office feeling raw but slightly hopeful that maybe therapy can actually help me get through this. My phone buzzes with a text message as I'm walking to my car, and I pull it out expecting it to be Alessandro or Detective Goodwin. Instead, it's from an unknown number, and the message just says, "I'm okay," followed by Kelly's name. Relief floods through me for about 3 seconds before suspicion takes over, because Kelly and I agreed on a safe word during her bathroom visit. She was supposed to include the word pumpkin in any message to let me know she was really the one sending it, and that she wasn't being forced. This text has no safe word, just those 2 words and her name. My stomach drops as I realize someone else probably has Kelly's phone or is standing over her making her send messages. I screenshot the text immediately and send it to both Detective Goodwin and Margot, with a note explaining that Kelly knows how important our code word is, and she would never forget to include it unless someone was forcing her. Detective Goodwin responds within minutes saying she's flagging this as potential coercion and adding it to the evidence file. That evening, Detective Goodwin calls to tell me that CPS and police attempted the emergency pickup at Kelly's mother's listed address, but the house was completely empty. Neighbors told officers they haven't seen anyone there for at least 2 days. My fear spikes so high I actually feel dizzy as I imagine the family moving Kelly and her daughter around to different locations to stay ahead of law enforcement. But underneath the fear, something else is building inside me. Something cold and focused and absolutely determined. Detective Goodwin must hear it in my voice because she quickly assures me they're expanding the search and have alerts out for Kelly's mother's vehicle. She tells me they're treating this as a potential child endangerment situation now and taking it extremely seriously. I thank her and update my evidence journal with this new information, even though my hands are shaking. Hendricks calls the next morning with news that makes my pulse jump. He traced the burner phone number that sent the suspicious text to a cell tower near a condo development where one of my aunt's friends lives. Detective Goodwin is already working on getting the friend's exact address and preparing for another pickup attempt. This time they're bringing more officers and additional CPS staff so the family can't just disappear again. The fact that we can track their movements through technology gives me this tense feeling that maybe we're actually closing in on finding Kelly and her daughter. I spend the rest of the morning on the phone with Margot as she coaches me through drafting an affidavit for tomorrow's emergency hearing. She helps me organize my thoughts and stick to just the facts without any emotional language that defense attorneys could twist around. We go through multiple drafts, and each time Margot points out places where I'm editorializing or making assumptions instead of stating what I actually observed. By the 4th draft, my statement is clear and specific and powerful in its simplicity. Just the facts of what I saw, what Kelly told me, and what the evidence shows. When we finally finish, I feel different somehow. Less like a victim and more like someone taking real steps to protect Kelly, instead of just reacting to whatever the family does next. Before bed, I record a voice memo on my phone describing everything that's happened since Kelly's bathroom visit. I talk about the threatening email, the neighbor's statement, Kelly's coerced retraction with bruises on her neck, the ring footage showing her daughter being taken, the empty house, the traced phone signal. Margot explained that these real-time records are valuable for establishing credibility later because they prove my perceptions haven't been colored by hindsight or coaching from attorneys. The act of speaking my truth out loud into the recording brings this strange, calm feeling through having structure and documentation. The bail modification hearing happens the next morning, and walking into that courtroom makes my stomach twist into knots. Uncle Jeff sits at the defense table with his lawyer, and he won't look at me. His lawyer stands up and argues that all the evidence is circumstantial, and that I'm orchestrating some kind of vendetta against my loving family who only wanted to help me. The words make rage flash hot through my chest, but I force myself to stay quiet and still. The judge looks skeptical as the defense lawyer talks. When Alessandro presents the ring footage and plays the neighbor's testimony, the judge leans forward and watches carefully. Alessandro also submits the threatening email and walks through the pattern of intimidation step by step. The judge takes about 5 minutes to review everything before making his ruling. Uncle Jeff will get a GPS ankle monitor that tracks his location at all times. The no-contact orders are expanded to explicitly include third-party contact through agents or intermediaries. It's something. It's progress. But it's not nearly enough, and I leave the courtroom feeling like we're still vulnerable and exposed. That afternoon, I'm scrolling through social media, and I discover that several family members have posted vague but clearly targeted messages. My mom posted about how mental illness runs in families, and people who make false accusations need help. Grandma shared an article about attention-seeking behavior. Aunt Sharon posted a prayer request for family members who are confused and lashing out. The public humiliation burns hot in my chest as I realize they're trying to destroy my credibility by painting me as crazy. But I remember Margot's coaching about documentation. I screenshot every single post methodically and send them all to Alessandro with timestamps. He responds within an hour saying he's already drafting an addendum to his witness tampering motion about cyber harassment and defamation. I refuse to hide or feel ashamed when I'm the one telling the truth, and they're the ones who drugged me and staged photos of my unconscious body. The emergency CPS hearing happens that same afternoon, and the courtroom feels surreal and cold as I sit in the gallery watching Judge Ramirez review documents. The judge reads through Hayden's petition with clinical precision, asking specific questions about the timeline and the evidence. Hayden presents the ring footage, the neighbor statement, Kelly's visible injuries, and the pattern of the family using the child as leverage. Judge Ramirez authorizes the use of locating services including cell phone tracking and vehicle monitoring. The judge grants temporary emergency custody to the state, which means CPS can remove Kelly's daughter immediately once she's found and place her in protective care. Hope for the child's safety wars with grief over the trauma this whole situation is causing her. I have to remind myself that staying with people who use her as a weapon to force silence is worse than the temporary disruption of foster placement. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. That evening, my phone rang and Detective Goodwin's voice came through steady but serious. She told me she needed to share something that was going to be hard to hear. My stomach dropped before she even started explaining. The financial investigation team had traced a pattern of payments from Uncle Jeff to multiple family members. The payments started right after the summer of 2015 when he abused Kelly at the lake house. Detective Goodwin read off the amounts slowly, and each number made me feel sicker. Kelly's mother received thousands of dollars for the house down payment just weeks after that summer. My parents got smaller deposits every few months for years. My grandparents received regular payments too. Aunt Sharon had been getting monthly transfers the entire decade. The clarity hit me like ice water because this proved the whole family knew. This wasn't just people being fooled or manipulated. Uncle Jeff bought their silence with actual money and they all took it. They all chose the payments over protecting Kelly. The systematic decade-long cover-up became impossible to deny, and I hung up the phone feeling like I might throw up. The next morning, I drove to John's office for my therapy session. My hands were still shaking from the financial records news. John noticed immediately and asked what was going on. I told him about the payment pattern and he nodded slowly like he understood how devastating that kind of betrayal felt. Then he shifted the session focus to something practical. He wanted to help me script boundaries for any contact attempts by family members. John had me practice phrases out loud. I'm not discussing this. Contact my attorney. This conversation is over. The words felt stiff and confrontational at first. I stumbled over them multiple times. John made me repeat each phrase until it started sounding more natural. He explained that having these scripts prepared reduces the cognitive load when I'm already stressed. My brain won't have to work as hard to figure out what to say in the moment. We role-played different scenarios. John pretended to be my mom calling to guilt-trip me. Then my grandma showing up at my door. Then a cousin sending texts. Each time I practiced my boundary statements. The repetition slowly transformed my anxiety into something more solid. The phrases became automatic instead of forced. I started feeling less reactive and more deliberate, like I was choosing my responses instead of being controlled by fear or anger. After the session, I checked my phone in the parking lot. There was a voicemail from an unknown number. I hit play, and Kelly's mother's voice filled my car. She was rambling and desperate, begging me to withdraw my statements, promising that everything would be fine if I just let the family handle this privately. Her voice cracked in a way that sounded like genuine desperation. For a second, I almost felt bad for her. Then I remembered the house Uncle Jeff bought her. I remembered the fresh bruises on Kelly's neck. I remembered her daughter being used as a weapon. My complicated grief hardened right back into resolve. I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Alessandro. Then I sent it to Detective Goodwin too. More evidence of the family's ongoing pressure campaign. Later that afternoon, Hendricks called with news about the photo metadata. He'd been working on recovering deleted files from an old family cloud-sharing account. Several relatives had access to it years ago. The timestamps on the photos showed they were uploaded right after the Thanksgiving incident. The exact timing matched when the audio recording captured them staging the scene with my unconscious body. This metadata destroyed any defense claim that the photos were innocent or taken at a different time. The evidence proved the family took those pictures and shared them among themselves exactly when we said they did. Dread and vindication twisted together in my stomach as I realized how much proof we were building. Alessandro called that evening and his tone was serious. The defense team was filing a motion to suppress the Thanksgiving dinner audio recording. They were arguing it was hearsay and unfairly prejudicial to Uncle Jeff. My anxiety spiked immediately. That recording was our most powerful piece of evidence. Without it, the case would be so much harder to prove. Alessandro must have heard the panic in my voice because he quickly explained he'd prepared counter-arguments. He talked about excited utterance and present sense impression, exceptions to hearsay rules. The legal reasoning was complex, but Alessandro broke it down in plain language. My real-time observations on the recording about what was happening to me qualified as present sense impressions. The family's immediate panicked responses qualified as excited utterances. Both of those are exceptions that let the recording be admitted even though it's technically hearsay. Alessandro's confidence helped me rally instead of spiraling into panic. I spent that evening at Alessandro's office with Margot practicing testimony. They took turns asking me likely questions from both the prosecution and defense sides. I learned to pause before answering instead of rushing to fill the silence. That pause gave me time to think and made me seem more credible. I kept tripping over certain details about the exact timeline. Alessandro and Margot adjusted my preparation to focus on what I actually remembered versus what I'd been told by others. They explained that credibility depends on honest answers. Saying "I don't know" when appropriate is better than guessing or making something up. The repetition of questions and answers transformed my anxiety into competence. The questions started feeling familiar instead of threatening. By the end of the session, I felt ready. Early the next morning, Detective Goodwin called about an anonymous tip. Someone had reported Kelly's daughter's location at a cousin's girlfriend's apartment across town. Detective Goodwin sounded suspicious about the timing and the source. She thought maybe the family was setting some kind of trap, but she was treating it as credible enough to investigate. She was already coordinating with CPS and police for another pickup attempt. My hope was cautious this time. I'd learned the family was capable of elaborate manipulation and lies, but I couldn't help praying this tip was real. That little girl needed to be somewhere safe. A few hours later, Detective Goodwin called back with news that made my knees weak. Police and CPS had found Kelly's daughter at the reported location. She was physically safe but visibly shaken. The officers said she was clinging to a stuffed animal and kept asking for her mommy. The emergency placement was executed smoothly. The trauma-informed officers let her bring her toy and blanket with her. She was being taken to a temporary foster home with an experienced placement family. When Detective Goodwin told me the child was finally secure, my relief was so intense it broke me completely. I hung up the phone and sobbed alone in my kitchen for 20 minutes straight. My whole body shook as I released tension I didn't even know I'd been carrying. That afternoon, my phone rang from another unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Kelly's voice came through in a frantic whisper. She said she was in a bathroom and only had a minute. The family lawyer had physically cornered her yesterday. He forced her to write the retraction statement. He threatened that she'd never see her daughter again if she didn't cooperate. Kelly's words tumbled out fast and scared. I listened carefully without interrupting. My protective fury was rising, but I stayed quiet and let her talk. I asked if I could record the call. Kelly said yes. I hit record and had her repeat everything she'd just told me. Now we had her account in her own voice explaining exactly how the family coerced her. Alessandro moved incredibly fast after I sent him Kelly's recording. He called me back within an hour. He was adding specific witness tampering charges against Kelly's mother, Aunt Sharon, and the family lawyer. The charges were based on Kelly's bathroom call and all the accumulated evidence of coordinated intimidation. Alessandro explained these were serious felonies that carried real prison time. Going after the people who helped Uncle Jeff might pressure them to flip and testify against him. My satisfaction felt sober rather than triumphant. I knew this escalation would make the family even more desperate and dangerous. My therapy appointment with John the next morning felt necessary after everything that happened with Kelly's bathroom call and the new charges. I sat in his office and tried to explain the guilt sitting in my chest about Kelly's daughter being scared and confused because I spoke up. John listened without interrupting and then asked me to think about when the trauma actually started for that little girl. Not when I recorded Thanksgiving dinner, or when I went to police. The trauma started 10 years ago when Uncle Jeff abused Kelly, and the family chose to cover it up instead of protecting her. John walked me through breathing exercises where I counted 4 seconds in, held for 4, then 4 seconds out. He had me tense and release different muscle groups starting with my feet and working up to my shoulders. The physical practice of the techniques made them feel real and usable instead of just ideas. He assigned me homework to practice the breathing and muscle relaxation twice every day, morning and night, so my body would learn the pattern. I left his office feeling like I had actual tools instead of just carrying the weight around. 2 days later, Alessandro called to tell me the defense team filed their motion to suppress the Thanksgiving audio recording. My stomach dropped because that recording was our strongest evidence of what actually happened. Alessandro explained their argument that the recording was hearsay and unfairly biased against Uncle Jeff, but he sounded calm rather than worried. He He walked me through his response brief that cited case law about excited utterance and present sense impression, exceptions to hearsay rules. My statements on the recording about what was happening to me in real time qualified as present sense impressions because I was describing my immediate experience as it occurred. The family's panicked responses right after I hit the floor qualified as excited utterances because they were immediate reactions to a startling event. The legal reasoning was complicated with Latin terms and court precedents, but Alessandro's confidence that the judge would admit the recording helped my nerves settle. He promised to send me a copy of his brief so I could read the full arguments. The next morning, Detective Goodwin called with news that made my hands shake. My neighbor 2 doors down had doorbell camera footage from Thanksgiving night that she just remembered to check. Goodwin sent me the video file, and I watched it 3 times in a row. The footage showed my aunt and uncle carrying my limp, unconscious body from their car to my front porch around 11 at night. They positioned me carefully at the bottom of my porch steps and adjusted my arms and legs to make it look like I'd tumbled down the stairs. My aunt kept checking over her shoulder while my uncle arranged my body like I was a mannequin they were setting up for display. Watching my own body being moved and posed while I was completely knocked out felt horrible and weird at the same time. My head lolled to the side when they shifted me, and my arms flopped limply as they positioned them. But the footage also proved without any doubt that their story about me drinking too much wine was a complete lie. Relief that we had this backup proof fought with disgust at seeing myself so vulnerable and violated. I forwarded the video to Alessandro and Margot immediately. That afternoon, a thick packet arrived by courier from the CPS office. Hayden Chavez had filed a formal petition for supervised visitation only between Kelly and her daughter. I read through the entire document even though the legal language made it slow going. The petition laid out in careful detail the pattern of family pressure and threats going back 10 years. It described how Uncle Jeff bought Kelly's mother's house right after the lake house abuse. It documented Kelly's coerced retraction attempt and the fresh bruises on her neck during her visit to me. It explained how the family used Kelly's daughter as leverage to force silence. Every paragraph built the case that unsupervised contact between Kelly and any family members created risk that they would use access to the child to pressure Kelly further. Reading the clinical professional language describing what my family did to Kelly and her daughter over the past decade made my protective feelings even stronger. This wasn't just about getting justice anymore. It was about making sure Kelly and her daughter could finally be safe. Margot called me that evening with good news for once. She'd connected Kelly with a shelter across town that specialized in cases where families used pressure and threats instead of physical violence. The shelter had experience with situations where the abuse came from multiple relatives working together. Margot helped Kelly get a safety phone that couldn't be tracked or monitored by family members. The shelter provided Kelly with legal aid lawyers who could help with the custody case and the criminal proceedings. They also had counselors on staff who understood the specific kind of trauma Kelly was dealing with. A small spark of hope lit up in my chest, thinking that maybe Kelly could actually break free from the family's control now. Maybe she could build a safe, stable life for herself and her daughter without constantly looking over her shoulder. The hope felt fragile but real. Monday morning, I opened my work email and found an anonymous message in my inbox with vague accusations about my mental health problems and false allegations against my family. The email was clearly designed to make me look unstable and damage my professional reputation. My stomach twisted into knots when HR called an hour later, asking me to come in for a meeting. I gathered up all my documentation before heading to the HR office. I brought copies of the criminal case paperwork, the restraining orders, and a letter from Alessandro on official DA letterhead confirming I was a victim and witness in an active prosecution. My HR representative was professional and kind as she reviewed everything I brought. She explained that the anonymous email would be treated as harassment and workplace intimidation, rather than credible information about my performance. The relief I felt walking out of that meeting made my knees weak. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang with Alessandro's number and my heart started pounding before I even answered. He read me the judge's ruling on the suppression motion, and I had to sit down on my kitchen floor as I listened. The audio recording was admissible as evidence. The judge found that my real-time observations and the family's immediate reactions qualified for hearsay exceptions. He would give the jury a limiting instruction about using the recording only for specific purposes, and not for general character judgments. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, because this evidence was absolutely crucial to proving what actually happened that night. Without the recording, it would just be my word against the entire family's coordinated story. Now the jury would hear Uncle Jeff's voice dripping with fake concern as he asked if I was feeling okay. They'd hear the thud of my body hitting the floor. They'd hear Aunt Sharon giving cold orders about staging the scene and taking photos. Detective Goodwin called 2 days later with information that made my anger sharp and clear. Uncle Jeff's GPS ankle monitor recorded a boundary violation when he drove past the street where Kelly's shelter was located. He didn't stop or approach the building, but he drove slowly down that specific street even though it wasn't on any route to anywhere he had legitimate reason to be. Goodwin documented the violation thoroughly with timestamps and GPS coordinates and reported it to the court. Some judges might excuse a brief violation as accidental, but Goodwin wanted it on record either way. I wasn't surprised that Uncle Jeff was testing the boundaries of his restrictions. That was exactly the kind of thing someone like him would do. But I was grateful we had systems in place to track and document his behavior so he couldn't claim ignorance. My next therapy session with John focused specifically on preparing for cross-examination. He explained that defense attorneys would try to twist my words and imply things that weren't true to confuse the jury. We practiced with him asking hostile questions designed to fluster me. He'd interrupt my answers, rephrase things incorrectly, and use aggressive tactics to try to shake my confidence. We did the role play over and over until I could maintain steady eye contact and give clear, direct answers even when John deliberately tried to rattle me. The confidence I felt by the end of the session came from repetition and practice rather than just hoping I'd do okay. I left feeling prepared instead of anxious about taking the witness stand. That same week, Alessandro called with news from the financial analyst working with law enforcement. They'd traced the house purchase for Kelly's mother all the way back through multiple paperwork layers to a shell company that was ultimately controlled by Uncle Jeff. The sick, twisted logic of it clicked into place as Alessandro explained the structure. Uncle Jeff didn't just pay Kelly's mother off with a one-time payment. He set up the ownership so he maintained legal control and could threaten to take the house back whenever Kelly tried to speak up. The planned-out, systematic nature of his manipulation and control made me understand this was never about one terrible mistake he made. This was about someone who thought through exactly how to maintain access to his victim and keep her silent for an entire decade. Alessandro called 3 days later with news that made my stomach twist into complicated knots. The defense team was signaling they might accept a plea deal on the witness tampering and possession charges, though they wanted to keep fighting the more serious counts. I sat down hard on my couch as he explained what this meant in practical terms. A plea would give us certainty and spare Kelly and me from testifying at trial, but it also meant Uncle would probably get lighter consequences than if we won full convictions on everything. Alessandro walked me through the math in plain language so I understood exactly what we were trading. Perfect justice almost never happens in the real world, he said. We had to weigh guaranteed accountability against the risk that a jury might acquit him completely if we went to trial. The bittersweet taste of compromise sat heavy on my tongue, but I understood the logic even if I hated it. Some consequences were better than possibly getting nothing at all. Kelly's closed chambers hearing for the CPS case happened the following week, and I wasn't allowed in the courtroom while she testified. I sat in the hallway outside for 2 hours, my leg bouncing constantly, imagining what Kelly was saying in there. Hayden came out afterward and sat down next to me on the hard wooden bench. Kelly had been scared, but she got through it, Hayden told me quietly. She described everything that happened at the lake house when she was 9 years old. She explained the decade of threats about the house and how the family used her daughter to force her silence. The judge listened carefully to every word, and Hayden said his expression showed he understood the seriousness of what Kelly had survived. The supervised visitation order got finalized right there in chambers with strict rules about location, supervision requirements, and absolutely no family contact allowed during visits. Kelly could start rebuilding her relationship with her daughter in a safe environment now. Relief made my eyes burn with tears I didn't let fall in that courthouse hallway. My work situation needed handling next, so I called HR and requested a meeting about extended leave. The representative listened as I explained I was a victim and witness in an active criminal prosecution with ongoing court proceedings. She asked careful questions about timeline, and I gave her the documentation Alessandro had provided, including letters from Detective Goodwin and the Victim Advocate Office. The company granted me protected leave under victim protection statutes, but with conditions attached. I had to stay in communication with my supervisor, provide updates on the legal timeline, and understand that reduced hours later would mean reduced pay. I accepted the terms immediately, even though the financial strain would hurt. Right now, I needed mental space to handle court proceedings and therapy sessions without worrying about work performance reviews. Relief at having the time off battled with anxiety about money. But Margot helped me fill out applications for victim compensation funds that might cover some of the lost income. The paperwork was complicated, but she walked me through every section. Plea negotiations kicked into high gear over the next 2 weeks, and Alessandro called me every few days with updates on the back and forth. He was pushing hard for Uncle to admit specific facts as part of any deal, not just plead guilty to generic charges. Alessandro also insisted on sex offender registration as a mandatory condition that couldn't be negotiated away. The defense team kept trying to minimize the charges and avoid the registration requirements entirely. Each phone call from Alessandro brought news of another round of offers and counteroffers. The process felt tense and procedural, like watching two sides haggle over something that mattered way more than they seemed to realize. Alessandro made it clear that while he valued my input, the final decision about accepting any plea belonged to the DA's office, not to me. I felt tense but tried to stay pragmatic about it. Some real accountability was better than risking a trial where a jury might believe the family's lies, and Uncle might walk away free. Writing the victim impact statement took me an entire weekend locked in my apartment with my laptop. Alessandro had sent me a template and guidelines, but I still struggled with how to put everything into formal language for a judge to read. I described waking up in the hospital with no memory of what happened after sitting down to Thanksgiving dinner. I detailed finding the audio recording and hearing my own voice get confused and slurred right before the thud of my body hitting the floor. I wrote about discovering that my family had drugged me, staged my unconscious body, taken photos, and then lied to paramedics and police. The ongoing trauma of knowing they violated me while I was helpless got its own paragraph. Every sentence felt exhausting and painful to write, but I also felt clear and purposeful rather than victimized. This was my chance to make sure my voice got heard in the legal process. The judge needed to understand what Uncle and the family had actually done, not just read dry charges on a page. The defense team made one last attempt to intimidate me the week before the plea hearing was scheduled. Their lawyer sent Alessandro a letter threatening to drag my private life and past relationships into trial testimony if we didn't accept a more lenient plea deal. They'd question my credibility, my motives, my mental state, everything. Alessandro called me immediately after receiving it, and I could hear the anger in his voice even though he kept his words professional. He told them to do their worst because my credibility was supported by physical evidence, witness testimony, medical records, and audio recordings. Character assassination wouldn't change the facts. I braced myself for the possibility of public humiliation anyway. My fear spiked sharp and hot when I imagined strangers reading lies about me in court transcripts. But then it steadied back down as I remembered that telling the truth mattered more than protecting my privacy. Let them try their tactics. The evidence would speak for itself. Judge Ramirez accepted the negotiated plea deal at a hearing I attended with Alessandro sitting next to me at the prosecutor's table. Uncle stood up in his suit and tie, looking smaller somehow than he had at Thanksgiving dinner. He pled guilty to felony witness tampering and possession of illicit images. The other counts got placed on something Alessandro called nolle prosequi, which meant the charges were dismissed but could be refiled if Uncle violated the terms of his plea agreement. The resolution felt hollow in my chest because it wasn't full justice for everything he'd done to Kelly and to me. But relief washed through me anyway, knowing he'd admitted guilt in open court and would face real consequences. Alessandro explained afterward that the nolle prosequi gave us ongoing leverage. If Uncle stepped out of line even once, they could bring back all those other charges. That helped a little bit. Sentencing happened 2 weeks later on a cold morning in the same courtroom. I sat in the gallery with Margot on one side and Detective Goodwin on the other. Judge Ramirez went through the sentencing calculations methodically. 3 years in state prison for the witness tampering charge, 5 years for the possession charge. The sentences would run consecutively, meaning Uncle had to serve them one after the other, not at the same time. 8 years total behind bars, plus lifetime sex offender registration that would follow him forever, plus a permanent no-contact order with Kelly, her daughter, and me. Relief made my whole body shake as I listened to the judge detail each consequence. I had to grip the wooden bench with both hands to keep myself steady. The registration requirement meant Uncle would never be able to hide what he was from neighbors, employers, or anyone who looked him up. That felt like real protection, even though I knew no sentence could actually undo the harm he'd caused. Aunt Sharon's plea deal came through the following week for misdemeanor obstruction charges. She got mandatory counseling and a suspended jail sentence that would only kick in if she violated the terms. The family fractured openly after that as different members started blaming each other publicly. Kelly's mother tried to claim Uncle had coerced her into silence. My parents insisted they were just following family loyalty and didn't understand what was really happening. Grandma refused to speak to anyone at all and changed her phone number. I watched the family I grew up with destroy itself through angry phone calls and accusations flying back and forth. My anger at them gradually faded into a sad, tired feeling as I realized this destruction was always going to happen once the truth came out. The lies had been holding them together, and without those lies, there was nothing left. Kelly called me 2 days after starting trauma-informed counseling with a therapist Margot had recommended. The therapist specialized in long-term abuse and family coercion cases. Kelly sounded exhausted, but there was something tentatively hopeful in her voice that I hadn't heard before. It felt good to talk to someone who understood the situation without judging her choices, Kelly said. The therapist didn't act like Kelly should have done things differently or been stronger. She just listened and helped Kelly start processing everything that had happened since she was 9 years old. Fragile hope bloomed in my chest that maybe Kelly could actually heal from this and build a healthy life for herself and her daughter. I knew recovery would take years and there would be setbacks. But hearing that small note of hope in Kelly's voice made everything we'd been through feel worth it somehow. A week after sentencing, CPS scheduled the first supervised visit between Kelly and her daughter at the shelter. I drove Kelly there because she was shaking too hard to drive herself. The visitation room had toys in one corner, and a small table with chairs, and a CPS supervisor sat in the back taking notes. Kelly's daughter came in holding a social worker's hand, and she looked so small and scared. She wouldn't look at Kelly at first, just stared at her shoes and twisted the hem of her shirt. Kelly sat down on the floor instead of in a chair and pulled out the little girl's favorite book from her bag. She started reading in a soft voice without pushing her daughter to come closer. After about 5 minutes, the little girl took one step forward, then another. By the time Kelly finished the second page, her daughter was sitting right next to her, leaning against her side. I watched through the observation window and tears just streamed down my face. The relief hit me so hard I had to grip the window frame to stay steady. But underneath the relief was this protective feeling, like I needed to stay alert because I knew this was just the start of their healing. The visit lasted 30 minutes, and when it ended, Kelly's daughter hugged her mom and didn't want to let go. The following week, I sat in John's office for my regular therapy session. He had me bring in a journal where I'd been tracking moments that made me feel panicked or unsafe. We spread out my notes on his desk and started looking for patterns. John circled every mention of glass clinking sounds, holiday references, and family gatherings. He explained that these were my trauma triggers, the things that would probably make me anxious for years. We made a plan for managing each one. For glass clinking, he taught me a grounding technique where I name 5 things I can see, 4 I can touch, 3 I can hear, 2 I can smell, and 1 I can taste. For holidays, we planned alternative traditions I could build that had nothing to do with family dinners. John was clear that avoiding triggers forever wasn't the goal. The goal was having strategies ready so when triggers hit, I wouldn't feel ambushed or ashamed. I could just use my tools and keep going. Understanding my own reactions this way felt powerful, instead of limiting. I left his office with a typed list of my triggers and corresponding strategies, and I taped it inside my medicine cabinet where I'd see it every day. That same week, Alessandro called to tell me he'd filed civil asset forfeiture paperwork, targeting the shell company that owned Kelly's mother's house. The legal explanation was complicated. Something about proceeds from criminal activity and facilitating ongoing crimes. I didn't understand all the technical language, but the practical part was clear. The house would stay with Kelly's family while the civil case worked through the courts. That meant Kelly's younger siblings wouldn't get kicked out onto the street. But it also meant consequences were still hanging over the adults who'd helped Uncle cover everything up. My relief about this was complicated and messy. Part of me wanted everyone who'd participated in the cover-up to lose everything. But another part of me kept thinking about Kelly's little brothers and sisters who hadn't done anything wrong. They shouldn't have to suffer because their parents made terrible choices. Alessandro explained that civil forfeiture cases could take years to resolve, so the practical impact right now was just uncertainty. The adults would know they might lose the house eventually. The kids would have stability for now. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was something. I spent an entire Saturday upgrading my home security. The locksmith came first and changed every lock on every door, including the garage. I paid extra for high-security locks that couldn't be picked easily. Then I installed 2 new security cameras, one covering my driveway and one covering my back door. The original Ring doorbell stayed, but now I had complete coverage of my property. Margot came over that afternoon and we sat at my kitchen table drafting a safety plan. We wrote down exactly what I would do if family members showed up at my door. Exactly what I would do if I noticed someone following me. Exactly what I would do if I received threats. Each scenario had specific steps, phone numbers to call, and places I could go. Writing it all down transformed my fear from this vague, anxious feeling into concrete preparation. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was ready. I had plans. I knew what to do. The shift from reactive fear to proactive preparation made me feel less like a victim and more like someone who'd taken control of her own safety. I put copies of the safety plan in my car, my purse, and by my bed. My employer's HR department approved my phased return to work plan on Monday. I'd start with 3 half-days per week and gradually increase hours as I felt ready. The email approval came with a note saying several colleagues had asked about me and were looking forward to my return. 2 coworkers sent me separate messages through the company system. One said she was glad I was coming back and that she'd missed working with me. Another said she'd been following the news coverage and wanted me to know she believed me. Both messages made me cry at my computer. I'd been so scared that the family's smear campaign had destroyed my professional reputation. I'd imagined everyone at work thinking I was crazy or vindictive or a liar. These small gestures of support and normalcy hit me harder than I expected. Going back to work felt like reclaiming a piece of my regular life that trauma had tried to steal from me. I marked my first day back on my calendar and felt something I hadn't felt in months. I felt like maybe I could be a normal person again. Not just a victim or a witness, but someone with a regular job and regular colleagues who cared about me. Kelly recorded her formal video statement at the police station 2 weeks after her first visit with her daughter. Detective Goodwin set up the camera and had Kelly sit in a comfortable chair instead of an interrogation room. I waited in the hallway because this needed to be Kelly's statement in her own words. The recording took 40 minutes. When Kelly came out, her face was red from crying, but she stood straighter than I'd seen her stand in months. Detective Goodwin told me later that Kelly had withdrawn her coerced retraction completely. She'd reaffirmed everything she originally disclosed about Uncle's abuse at the lake house. She'd described the family's threats and the lawyer's intimidation. She'd talked about watching them take her daughter and feeling like she had no choice but to lie. The video would be stored with the DA's office as insurance. If Uncle ever tried to appeal his conviction, or if the family attempted any future manipulation, this statement would be there as evidence. Kelly's voice on that recording was stronger than it had been during her whispered bathroom phone call. Watching her find that courage again, seeing her hard-earned strength, made me feel proud of how far she'd come. She'd been broken down and terrified, and they'd used her child against her. But she'd survived it, and now she was fighting back. I asked Detective Goodwin if she'd take me to see the old lake house location. We drove there on a Saturday morning, about 2 hours outside the city. I brought my camera because I wanted documentation, not memories. The building had been torn down years ago and sold to a developer who never built anything new. It was just an empty lot now with overgrown grass and a few foundation stones still visible. I walked around the perimeter taking photos from different angles. Detective Goodwin stayed by the car giving me space. I didn't leave flowers or write any notes or do anything ceremonial. I wasn't here to memorialize this place. I was here to witness that the location where Kelly's nightmare started 10 years ago was just empty space now. It had no power over us anymore. The lake house existed only in memories and in Uncle's crimes, not in any physical place that could still hurt us. Standing there looking at that vacant lot, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness because I'd never forgive what happened to Kelly, but maybe acceptance that this chapter was closing. The lie the family had built around this place was gone. The truth was out. Kelly was safe. Her daughter was safe. I took one last photo of the empty lot and got back in Detective Goodwin's car. We drove back to the city in comfortable silence. 2 months after Uncle's sentencing, Kelly and her daughter moved into transitional housing together. It was a small 2-bedroom apartment in a supervised building where other families were rebuilding their lives. Kelly had finished her job training program and started working part-time at a grocery store. She was saving money for their own place, something permanent that would be just theirs. I helped them move their few belongings and watched Kelly's daughter run around the apartment picking which bedroom she wanted. The little girl was still shy sometimes, but she laughed more now. She called Kelly Mama again without hesitation. I closed my evidence journal that night knowing the immediate crisis was finally over. The locks on my doors worked perfectly. My security cameras gave me peace of mind. I was sleeping through most nights now with only occasional nightmares. My phased return to work was going well, and I'd moved up to 4 full days per week. Life wasn't perfect, and the scars from what my family did were still healing. Therapy with John was helping, but I knew I'd probably need it for years. Certain sounds still made me flinch. Family holidays would probably always be hard. But Kelly and her daughter were safe in their own home. Uncle was in prison where he belonged, serving 8 years and registered as a sex offender for life. The family members who'd helped him were facing their own consequences. I woke up every day knowing I'd done the right thing by speaking up, even when it was terrifying. Even when my own family turned against me. Even when I lost people I'd known my whole life. Some things are worth losing everything for, and protecting Kelly and her daughter was one of them. Well, that's another totally essential piece of internet history completed. If you're still watching, you clearly enjoy emotional damage with a side of humor. Subscribe and let's keep testing your limits next time.